Hello, 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 everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to the Flight Sim community. This is Flight Strike 95, and welcome back to another 50 States of 50 Streams. Today, we're officially back in beautiful Wyoming. Today, we're here at Jackson Hole Airport, right inside Grand Teton National Park. I hope you're all doing well here today. Happy Friday. The weekend's finally come, and we got an exciting flight plan that will take us across Wyoming. Wyoming is definitely interesting in the fact that it's one of our nation's least populous states, but as a result, it's one of the most has some of the most untouched wilderness of any of the contiguous 48 states. Lots of natural beauty here to visit here in this state. Before we get started, I do want to say hello to everyone in chat and all the lurkers. Hello, you guys. I hope you're all doing well. Ned Vibes, good to see you. Ned, I hope you're doing well. You've been following me since for over 2 years now. Pretty crazy to think about it. And Super Typhon, good to have you on board, my dude. I hope you're doing well. So the plane we're taking here today is something a little different. I haven't taken this plane out for one of my streams. This is the Canadair CL415. If you guys have never seen this thing before, this is actually built by Canadair and later developed by Bombardier in De Havilland, Canada. And this is a very popular aircraft firefighting purpose. It can also do search and rescue and even utility transport. It was built in the 1990s. This bad boy is powered by two Pratt & Whitney PW123 turboprops that produce 2,300 horsepower each. She has a pretty impressive range of around 1,300 nautical miles for long-range cruises. She can cruise up to 180 knots. But of course, this thing's most impressive feature is it can carry a large amount of water. It carries about 6,100 liters of water, or 1,621 US gallons of water for water bombing. It can also carry up to 8 paratroops and up to 6,400 pounds of cargo. Yeah, this is a very impressive aircraft. Here, very impressive plane, and it's used all across the globe, from of course Canada to Europe, Southeast Asia, and even the United States. Tons of these are very popular. Yeah, I wanted to take, but yeah, my life's going well, Ned. It's going pretty good. We're about in the tail end of this series, by the way. We still have a couple more states left to go, and I will also come up with the Washington D.C. stream as well for the nation's capital. And I'll be flying through each of the capitals of the United States in its history. I'm thinking about doing that from Boston over to New York to Philadelphia, then to Washington. We'll be doing that for the nation's capital stream, Washington, D.C., and that will wrap up the final part of this series. I wanted to do the bonus part since D.C. is our nation's capital. It's not a state, but I wanted to include it here in our journey too. Let's go ahead and get this Canadair started. Let's get this bad boy started. Make sure all those round safety pins have been removed. Okay, intake, uncover. So the external is checked. Pre-flight inspection. We're gonna check on, make sure we check on these right batteries. Check on. Oh, nice! You drive test on driving school. That's fantastic. Congratulations. That's awesome. Ignition start B. Like they're both at normal. Like normal. We're just getting. Oh, I know that's congrats. I've always wanted to drive. It's hard with me for my autism, and that's why I can't really drive. But that's still amazing, though. Actually, get to drive. That's so massive. Congratulations. Now you need to pass the government driving test. I know that sounds exciting. We're just getting ready to start the engines. Finally, we're gonna go ahead and after starting engines, we're just gonna check out the. We're just gonna check out the fuel and stuff. Here are the service lock. Thanks so much. We're just gonna get the service lock gone. The primary flight controls are now released. Go ahead and we're gonna set these to max. Like I said, my first time starting this thing, so got it done. And we're gonna go ahead and get her taken off. Here we go, guys. So this is Jackson Hole Airport. Now, if you guys never been to Jackson Hole Airport, I've actually flown into this airport plenty of times throughout Flight Sim 2020. You all guys probably know this is one of the coolest airports in the United States. It's one of the most scenic and beautiful airports in the country. So Jackson Hole Airport is actually the busiest airport in Wyoming, believe it or not. It serves about 455 passengers a year. Last year, over 1 million people flew into Jackson Hole Airport. But here's a fun fact. This airport was created back in the 1930s to put in Teton Town, and this was the best place to put it. However, the airport was then part of a national monument in 1943. And then it later merged with Grand Teton National Park in 1950. So thus, this is the only commercial airport in the country being located inside of a national park. Now, of course, being inside of a national park is going to have some interesting challenges. For one, is a shorter runway. They tried extending it for many years, but they couldn't because you know why? The National Park Service didn't want any of this because this airport's also very noise sensitive due to the sage grouse that lives in this area. But despite that, though, serves over 15 destinations, including Salt Lake City, San Francisco, LA, San Diego, Minneapolis, Chicago, New York, Atlanta, and Dallas. And the biggest airport plane that can land here at this airport is a Boeing 757-200 from Delta, the biggest plane. Other planes include Airbus A319, A320, E175, and the Bombardier CRJ-700. So our first city is Jackson, Wyoming. This is one of the most popular tourist destinations and resort towns in the state. Of course, this is many people's gateway to Jackson, Grand Teton, and Yellowstone National Parks. But it's a very popular tourist destination due to ski resorts and national parks. There's about 10,000 people. However, if tourists come around during tourist season, this population spikes up significantly for tourists. It's a pretty expensive city to live in. And of course, it's home to many arts and cultural festivals, including the Elk Fest, where they collect elk antlers every year. And there are many movies that shot here, including Big Trail, Rocky IV, and Django Unchained, were many of the movies shot here in Jackson. Yes, they're not the loudest birds, but yeah, sage grouse are very much pretty loud birds. They're not the loudest, but they are very loud. I'm gonna go ahead and take off here. And rotate. Now, of course, this thing has no autopilot, so I will have to be flying this thing manually. But I'm okay with this. So this is Grand Teton National Park. We will be visiting this park during our National Park series. But I thought I wanted to start here because this is a beautiful airport, and I think it's way too pretty of an airport to not use flying around. Oh, that's just a gorgeous picture. With Grand Teton in the distance. It is an absolutely gorgeous park. Some people say it's better than Yellowstone. Of course, we'll be paying a visit there, so we're going to be... Go ahead and reduce... I do apologize for getting out of the main screen. I'm just wanting to see how much frame I'm going to fly this. Because it is hand flown, so I will have to fly this. Yeah, Wyoming is definitely a really cool state. So, and with Wyoming having 2 national parks, we'll be flying over some of Wyoming's national parks and stuff through our series. We'll be flying over Yellowstone, of course, the northwest part of the state, and we'll also be visiting Grand Teton National. So we'll be visiting there for our national park series. Okay. So our max altitude for today is 14,000 feet. Yes, we will be climbing that high. We're going to be going over the some of the mountain ranges here in this part of Wyoming. So here is Jackson Hole, the famous resort area here in this part of Wyoming. Now, of course, this is a great aircraft if you wanted to do some firefighting. On. So I wanted to ask you guys if you guys have got any really cool plans this weekend, if you guys got some awesome plans to come up. So for me, I don't really have too much planned this weekend. I know they're going to do some stuff. My parents are going to do some stuff around the house. Going to get a fan for the room, for my room and stuff. But not really that much going forward this week. Of course, we'll be back in Utah on Sunday, so we'll be returning back to Utah. And then after that, I think we only have 5 more states left to cover on this series, by the way. First, we'll be covering next week Oklahoma and New Mexico next week. So we're going to go to the Sewer State, and we're going to head to the Land of Enchantment in New Mexico. Here it is, guys. This is Jackson. Absolutely gorgeous area. This area of Wyoming is absolutely breathtaking. This is why I always love flying into Jackson. It's just a gorgeous area of the United States. This is after Jackson. This is Jackson, Wyoming. Oh, this is Jackson, Wyoming. Absolutely gorgeous area. One of the prettiest areas here in the United States. Jackson is a place I really want to visit. Jackson's, but it won't be for a very long time until I go to Jackson in real life. Yeah. Oh, that might just be an even better screenshot. Oh my gosh, gorgeous. So we're gonna be flying. So this is Jackson Peak and all that. We're flying through some of the beautiful peaks here of this part of Wyoming. Our first flight is going to take us around 97 nautical miles. This will be good enough time to talk about Wyoming's history. Yes, there isn't a lot about Wyoming's history, though. To be fair, it is a really new state in the United States. Being one of the regions. So, for me at least, let's go ahead and talk about Wyoming as we're going to be flying around this area. So, Wyoming is one of our landlocked states in the Mountain West region of the United States, surrounded by the U.S. states of Montana, South Dakota, Nebraska, Idaho, Utah, and Colorado. Its population is actually the least of all 50 states, with only 587,000 people. This makes it the second least densely populated state in the United States after Alaska, as Wyoming is also our 10th biggest state. Its capital, most populous city, is Cheyenne, with 65,000 people. Now, of course, Wyoming's geography, lots of mountains, high plains, semi-arid steppes, and more. But believe it or not, just under half the land of Wyoming is actually owned by the federal government, which makes it 6th in the United States amount of land and 5th in population of its land that's owned by the federal government. And it needs to be considered you have 2 national parks in Grand Teton, Yellowstone, 2 natural recreation areas, 2 national monuments, including the first ever national monument at Devil's Tower in the northeast part of the state, and as well as historic sites and wildlife refuges. Of course, one interesting thing about Wyoming's feature is farming and ranching and range wars, which are very well known in Wyoming state history. Of course, nowadays it's mainly tourism and extraction of minerals. And Wyoming has no corporate or individual corporate income tax, no tax on retirement income. So it's a bit of a tax haven compared to some of our U.S. states earlier in the series. So, to talk about the history of Wyoming, before the European American settlers arrived, we had several Native American groups. They include the Crow, Arapaho, Lakota, and Shoshone. But a few of the original inhabitants explored were the account of the first rich in the region. Southwest Wyoming was once claimed by the Spanish, and it was even part of Alta California. However, the U.S. expansion brought a lot of settlers who fought for control, and the Mexicans ceded for in 1858 during the Mexican-American War. Of course, from the late 18th century, French-Canadian trappers also visited this area, and in fact, some of their toponyms are actually still here, including Teton and Laramie. Yes, actually reference the fact the French were involved. And of course, the American John Coulter first recorded a description in English of this in 1807, and he was a part of the Lewis and Clark expedition, which was guided by Toussaint Charbonneau and his wife Sacagawea. And at the time, his accounts of the Yellowstone area, which we will be visiting on our first national park journey, was seen fictional. Well, it turns out that later on he was proven absolutely right, because, well, Yellowstone's one of our great national parks. Definitely pay that area a visit. Of course, later on, the Oregon Trail got through much of Wyoming, was the Oregon Trail, which followed the route that as immigrants moved to the West Coast. One particular guy in 1850, Jim Bridger, documented what was now known as Bridger Pass, which is the mountain pass near the south of the Great Divide Basin. He also explored Yellowstone and field reports in the region that were largely regarded as tall tales. Again, people didn't think Yellowstone would ever exist. But it turns out, well, he was right. To be proven right later on in life. Of course, the railroads then later came to Wyoming, with the Union Pacific Railroad in 1867 reached Cheyenne, and the population growth was stimulated. And they established the Wyoming Territory in July 25th, 1868. However, unlike Colorado, it didn't have many gold and silver deposits, so as a result, there was no population boom. But there was a bit of growth in South Pass City in 1867. Of course, the government had expeditions to Yellowstone and realized what Coulter and Bridger said ended up being proven true. And as a result, in 1872, Yellowstone National Park was created, possibly the world's first national park ever built. Also, one other unique area about Wyoming was in 1869, when Territorial Governor John Allen Campbell actually did something unprecedented at the time. He extended the right of vote to women, which makes Wyoming the first territory in the United States to actually grant voting rights to women. This is why, and hence, Wyoming's official nickname, the Equality State. That's why I gave it its famous nickname. And women first served in juries in 1870 at Laramie, and later it became more of a pioneer for women to politics, including court bailiffs, female justice of peace, and eventually in 1924 it also elected its first female governor in Congress, Nellie Taylor Ross. So that's why Wyoming is known as the Equality State. And its constitution also had ones of water rights, which, of course, for rights of, and basically water rights, for those who don't know, is right to use a water from a water source. Eventually, though, Wyoming Territory was trying to get to admission of the Union, and eventually happened in March 27th, 1890, when Benjamin Harrison signed the statehood bill, making Wyoming our 44th state of the Union. Yes. However, despite that, though, Wyoming is pretty quiet in terms of historical stuff. Like I said, it wasn't involved in the Civil War, and there was quite a few Indian conflicts with the native tribes during the 1850s and 70s. The Black Hills War happened during this time around the western part of Wyoming. But of course, Wyoming really grew in recent memories due to mineral use, especially with as well. So yeah, that is Wyoming's history, guys. I hope you enjoy that bit of it. But yeah, this is Wyoming, and this is absolutely just gorgeous here. And we'll be flying through much of this part of our national park journey with our X-Cubs. We'll be taken through in savage Norton area. Yeah, just what a breathtaking. So, if you guys aren't aware of, though, of course, so I want to let you guys be aware of this, but I might be heading back to Europe next year. I didn't think we would ever, if my family and I, we weren't thinking about ever going back to Europe. But it turns out, due to some planning and stuff, I might be returning back to the continent next year. And I might get a trip in Europe booked for next year. It'll be another cruise. It'll be a 14-day cruise in April, out of London. Which means, yes, there's going to be lots of sea days, of course, but but I think it was a good time to visit the Mediterranean. I mean, it's during shoulder season, so it's not going to be very busy. It wasn't going to be very busy, so that's why I did that. But we're basically going to go sail to London, sail from Southampton, go down 2 days at sea. We're going to go to Cadiz, hopefully to see Seville. Go back at sea, and then hit 5 straight ports, back to back to back. Barcelona, Toulon, Livorno for Florence and Pisa, Rome, Civitavecchia for Rome, in Sardinia at Alghero. Then end it with 4 more sea days in a row. So, yeah, that's going to be where we're going to be going next year, hopefully, because I didn't think we would ever go back to Europe. In fact, it was between that and the Baltics trip, the Baltics. But ultimately, we decided to go to the Mediterranean while we had the chance. Plus, I mean, it would turn out an opportunity to visit Seville, Barcelona, Florence and Pisa, and Rome. We would turn down that offer. I don't think anyone would. So I've been doing some research for my mom and like check what's in ports, check what's in the ports, check about what are some things to do, some POIs for each locations. Because I'm very interested in checking out all of this. Of course, you know me as a sports fan, I wanted to check out at least one of the soccer stadiums and stuff. Particularly in Barcelona and Rome would be key. Gotta get some gear and stuff, of course. Yes, I'm very much looking forward to the trip. So I'm very excited though to get back to Europe, of course. So I'm looking forward to that. So, but yeah, I've already listed a few interesting places that I really, really want to go. Of course, in Barcelona, there's the Sagrada Familia, which would be amazing to see. Barcelona's got its football stadiums of Camp Nou and RCDE Stadium. They got the Montjuic area. There's there's tons of stuff. Florence, of course. I mean, who doesn't want to explore downtown Florence and explore the historic areas? And of course, Pisa. I was thinking about doing an excursion that takes us to um, Pisa and Florence both, and that way I get to see both Florence and Pisa, which would be really good to have. And that way I can visit both cities, check them both out. I mean, how cool would that be? They also have the Cinque Terre, which is, if you guys aren't aware, um, Cinque Terre is basically on the coast of the western part of Italy. That's not far from Genoa, actually. Our port's in Livorno here. So Cinque Terre is going to be somewhere in the western coast by La Spezia and all that. They got some beautiful stuff into the West Coast. That's also pretty cool. But of course, the one I'm most excited for was Rome. Because Rome is a city I've been wanting to visit for years. Who doesn't want to see Rome? The Colosseum, Roman Forum, various fountains and the cathedrals there too. And of course, you can't forget about the Vatican. Checking out. Of course, who doesn't want to check out all the Vatican stuff too? That's why I've been trying to get information. Wait, look at the peaks here. These are part of another part of the mountain range here in Wyoming. Definitely see the valleys and the mountains. It's gorgeous. Of course, last week was the opening of our new hub in Genoa. I really enjoyed the new hub. It's going to take some getting used to landing those big wide bodies at the small airport. Not the smallest airport, it's just a bit of a tight fit. And I can definitely see why people voted for the new hub. The approaches are beautiful and the scenery looks fantastic in Genoa. Plus, Genoa is a really historic city. Let's not forget, Christopher Columbus was from Genoa. It was the hardest seat of its own kingdom and stuff. Though I really did want Madrid as the hub, since I like Spain. Spain's a country I would love to visit. Pretty much looking forward to all of this. Of course, this weekend, Allison Johnson will be returning back for another one of her historic flights. She'll be back to ready to fly again on Saturday. She'll be doing one of her a pretty short flight from Shirihama to Tokyo. So she'll be doing that on Sunday. It'll be about 3 hours and 22 minutes approximately, ETE. So she'll be doing that as well. Also, for Murphy, he'll be back later today. He'll be doing the P-38 flight in the Pacific. And of course, he'll be back Sunday for the long-haul flight. Of course, I'll be streaming during that time. But he'll be flying from Dublin to Detroit in the, I believe in the 777. But it'll be a long flight. But we'll definitely catch his stream when we get done. Hours. So, yes, we got a lot looking forward to this weekend, guys. So, of course, I'll put some documents and information for the all countries in the National Park Series. We'll put more information out for those streams when the time comes. We'll put the information up, and we'll go for a briefing of each of our national parks. So I'll put like a video for each of the national parks cover, and then we'll be going on from there. But the first series of the national park one I'm going to be doing is a bit of a prequel series, and we're going to be flying into Montana over from Idaho to Montana. We'll be flying from here to Boot. From Boise to Boot. So we'll be flying over some of the national forest, and we'll fly over that. And we'll talk about the National Park Service and the history of national parks itself. And that way we get a bit of an introduction to this whole series as we head our way over to Yellowstone. Wow. Hey, Red Baron, good to see you, my dude. I hope you're doing well, Red Baron. We're flying in Wyoming in the Canada Air CL-415. Hope you're doing well, my dude. Beautiful scenery out here today. Perfect scenery for taking such a brilliant aircraft, of course. Really cool plane, of course. The CL-14 can actually reach an altitude. It can actually reach a pretty high altitude, I believe. Its max altitude is 15,000 feet, though it can operate up to 20. Its servicing is 14,000, but it can operate up to 20,000 feet. So I think it depends on how much water it has, and weight can affect its altitude, which is still pretty good, in fact. It is a really nice aircraft. Yeah, 20,000 feet is ceiling, so you got plenty of altitude. Fly this. Fly this. So, yeah, very, very excited for next year. Can't wait for it. And I can't wait for the new series to get going. To finally get that series up and going for a bit. Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting planes we haven't flown yet in Sim. So we're gonna be heading to Lander not too long. We're gonna be heading to Lander, Wyoming will be our first stop of the day. Um, so interesting thing about Lander, as we're arriving near the airport, this is the county seat of Fremont County, Wyoming. It's located in the central part of the state along the middle fork of the Popo-Angie River, just south of the Wind River Indian Reservation that's shared by the Eastern Shoshone and the Northern Arapaho tribes. It's a major tourist center. It's a tourist center here in this part of Wyoming. Population 7,546 people. Lander was previously known as Push Route, Old Camp Brown, and Fort Auger. The present name was actually chosen to reference General Frederick W. Lander. He was a U.S. Army general of the Union Army, and he's explored this part of the Oregon Trail. Of course, this town was most well known for being a route town where the people explored this area as a route to Yellowstone. And it also resulted in a lot of natural features like hot springs, oil reserves, and hieroglyphs. And it's where Wyoming's first oil well was located. It then later became the westward terminus of the Cowboy Line of the Chicago North Railway. And later it became a big role for a lot of tourism stuff. Pretty big tourism for a lot of art, pioneer days, and its outdoor attraction. Definitely a pretty cool little town. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and make our way to Lander. Might have to descend down pretty soon. I'm gonna go ahead and lower the power for a bit. Start descending down for our first stop. Like I said, I like doing this series because it will push me out of my comfort zone a bit and fly different planes I don't really get to fly all that often. Lander Huntfield will be our first stop. Kilo Lima November Delta is going to be our first stop. So our flight plan is going to take us from Jackson over to Huntfield. Then we'll go down to Wallen. Here's our name. I forgot to show it to you guys earlier. But our flight plan is going to take us from Jackson. We'll fly over the different wilderness. We'll make our way to Lander for our first stop. We'll head down southeast. We'll be heading to our second stop in Wallens. right in the Continental Divide region of Wyoming, central Wyoming, and finally we'll be headed away over to Laramie, Wyoming. Going to Laramie, we'll fly over to Laramie, then stop in Cheyenne to wrap up the last leg of the trip. So yeah, that is where this is going to be taking us. It's weird that I don't fly with autopilot, but I'm going to have to get used to doing more of these without autopilots throughout the next series. So in terms of sport events going on, the Club World Cup final is going to happen tonight, I believe. So last week, Chelsea beat Fluminense, Brazilian side, and then Wednesday was PSG clubbing Real Madrid. So PSG could finish an absolute insane season if they beat Chelsea. I mean, on one hand, if Chelsea were to win, they would complete two pretty big trophies: the Conference League, and then the World Cup. Not only would they become a European, be the first European club to win all European competitions, they will be the first club to actually win all European competitions plus a Club World Cup, plus all international club competitions too, which would make Chelsea a pretty special club. Or PSG completes their first quadruple ever, winning 4 trophies in the season, and become the first French club to win 4 trophies in 1 year. So it's going to be a pretty insane matchup. And then other sports, Major League Baseball is going on. The Blue Jays are continuing to tear things up right now in the American League East. The Rays are doing pretty good, third. Top 4 are all about 500. The Orioles are not having a good year. They're under 500. AL Central is dominated by the best team in the American League. The Detroit Tigers have been really good all season. They've clearly been the best team. The next best is 13 games behind. The White Sox aren't very good this year, and then the AL West has been the Astros. And then for the wildcard situation, the 3 division winners, the Blue Jays, Tigers, and Astros, and then your 3 wildcard teams are the Yankees, Rays, and Red Sox. Yes, imagine 4 AL East teams making the postseason. I know, it's crazy as it sounds. In the National League, it's been dominant. The NL East has been taken over by the Phillies and Mets. The Nationals are finished 16 games back. The Central has been led by the Cubs. But the Central's been very competitive all year except for the Pirates. And then the NL West, the Dodgers are the clear best team, but the Giants and Padres aren't that far behind. The Rockies are even more rubbish than normal, 21-72 record. Yeah, they're horrible. And then the National League playoff picture would be the Phillies, Cubs, Dodgers, Mets, Brewers, and Giants all make the playoff if the playoffs end. So that's kind of how the MLB stands are working out. Yes, the All-Star game has been, and the roster has finally happened in the All-Star game coming in July 15th. So they officially made the All-Star game rosters. So here they are, the this year's American League All-Star rosters. So it turns out Jude Caminero of the Rays makes his first All-Star game. Good for him. He's definitely a very deserving All-Star. He's been why the Rays have been a lot more competitive recently. But the most notable American League players, of course, Aaron Judge. He's the American League's vote leader. You also have Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Cal Raleigh, who's also in the home run derby. Riley Green's been great all year. Javi Baez is having a bounce back season in Detroit. Brandon Lyle's in the All-Star game as well. And then the most notable pitcher, of course, Tarek Skubal. He'll probably be the starter as Tarek Skubal of the Tigers. We also have Jacob deGrom, Max Fried, doing well. And then the National League, of course, lots of Dodgers in this All-Star game. Bill Smith, Freddie Freeman, and of course Shohei Ohtani, obviously. But Acuna Jr. is back in the All-Star game as well. Good to see him back and healthy. And of course, Elly De La Cruz made the All-Star game, being one of the only Reds to make the All-Star game, along with Andrew Abbott. Clayton Kershaw also got in the All-Star game as a legend pick. Kershaw's making it to the All-Star game. But yeah, crazy stuff. So, pretty crazy MLB All-Star game stuff as well. Hey, Shirley Dev, good to see you, Shirley. About to make our first stop here in Lander. This is Lander, Wyoming. But yeah, I hope you're doing well, Shirley Dev. We're about to make our first stop here in Lander, Wyoming. So, Lander Field's right here. We're going to go ahead and land the title. Here we go, there's Lander, and we're going to make our way first land of the day. $268, not bad. Oh, nice, you did a bike ride out in the sun. Hope you're not getting too hot and sweaty. Okay, it was 2 rides because you stopped at a coffee. Oh, nice. Got some good exercise there, my dude. We're going to stop here for just a bit. And take a look at the Wyoming scenery, of course. Mountains are in Wyoming. So we'll stop here for just a minute or two so everyone to catch up. We're on the Southeast Asia server, and here's our route for today. Pretty simple. It's 70 degrees. Yeah, not much for some of you, but nice and toast. Yeah, I guess in Europe you get used to the more moderate temperature. Let's go ahead and prepare for the next leg coming up soon. We'll be heading our way over to Rollins, which is about 99 nautical miles south. Go ahead and prepare for the next leg. Bless you. Hey, Sky Command, my dude. Welcome on in, Sky. I hope you're doing well. We're in Wyoming today. Um, Hope you're having a great day and hope you're prepared for a good weekend, my dude. We're flying the Canadair CL-15. Um, the mighty firefighting plane. So welcome in, my dude. I'm gonna go ahead and prepare for the leg over. This is the 44th State of the Union, by the way, Sky Command. We're flying from Jackson over the Cheyenne today. Okay, for this one, our max altitude is going to be only 9,000 feet. Again, with this turboprop, I'm going to go ahead and power it down just. And I will all speed. I hope you're doing well, my dude. Yeah, this is our CL-415, the mighty turboprop firefighting plane, flying boat. Let's go ahead and talk about Wyoming. Thanks for the shout out, Super Typhon. Check out Sky Command, a great content creator and great dude. I think you'd love his streams and stuff whenever he gets a chance. So we're going to be going ahead and cover Wyoming's geography for a bit while we're here. So geographically speaking, Wyoming's geography is really interesting. For one, the western half of the state is covered by ranges and rangelands of the Rocky Mountains, while the east half of the state is a high elevation prairie called the High Plains. Compared to the rest of the country, this is drier and windier and split between semi-arid and continental climates with greater temperatures compared to other parts of the United States. Of course, a lot of this is federally owned land. Yes, it's among the most federally owned land in the United States. Only rivaled by some of the states, including Nevada and stuff. Hey, Bonnie's player Larry Gopnik. Hello, you two. I hope you're all both doing well. Yes, Wyoming has a lot of topography maps. Wyoming's topography is really interesting as well. Of course, one interesting thing, of course, is the mountain ranges. Most notably, there are several big ones. Um, the tallest peak in Wyoming is actually Gannett Peak. Is the tallest peak in Wyoming at 13,000 feet to the Bell Forge River Valley in the northeast corner. Some of the most notable ranges include, most notably, the Teton Range, which part of it is included in the national park. And it's home to Grand Teton, the second tallest peak in the state. Of course, north and south across the Central Park is the Continental Divide. And many of these rivers that divide the drain are in the Missouri River. And they include the North Platte River, Wind River, Bighorn, and Yellowstone rivers. And also the Snake River, too, which drains into the Columbia River. And a lot of this region has a lot of different ecoregions, home to a wide variety of plants and animals. So, really cool stuff to cover here in Wyoming. And we actually flew over a couple of the mountain ranges here during the Bridger Teton and Shoshone National. In fact, we actually flew over Gannett Peak earlier. I forgot, we flew over Gannett Peak. That's the tallest peak in Wyoming, by the way. But yeah, really cool. Beautiful state, though. Wyoming's one absolutely amazing. Of course, Wyoming's climate also reflects this differences, too. You see, it's generally semi-arid and continental, and is drier than the rest of the United States due to the topography. Summers of Wyoming are warm with high temperatures averaging between 80 and 90 degrees in most of the state. However, with a high increase in elevation, it drops with locations above 9,000 feet, or averaging around 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And summer nights are characterized by rapid cool down with even the hottest temperatures in the 50s and 60s. Of course, Wyoming is a pretty dry state with much of the land receiving less than 10 inches of rainfall a year. It depends on the elevation. Lower areas make it nearly a true desert, while others can typically range around more in the northwest part of the state. The highest temperature recorded in Wyoming is 114 degrees at Beeson in July 12, 1900, and the lowest recorded temperature is negative 66 degrees in Riverside, Wyoming on February 9th, 1933. And thunderstorm activity is the highest during the late spring and early summer. So, yep, that is Wyoming's geography. So there is the geography and climate of Wyoming. No, I like geography and stuff. I love geography and exploring the world. I don't hate it in school. I actually love geography. I've always did well in geography. Sure, Dev. Geography. I like history and geography. I like both of them. I actually wanted to be a historian and stuff for in my career and stuff, but unfortunately there wasn't a lot of opportunities for it with someone with autism. So then it became partly with business, and then later on I became a biologist. Still waiting for opportunities though, but I'm still waiting for all. Yeah, I put a lot of work into all this. So yeah, you guys can see down to your left. You can see some bits of the Colorado Divide area here in Wyoming, in central Wyoming. See all these canyons and stuff running down through this area. Different mountains and canyons all across. Definitely a I was sure. Yes, I know. I guess some people grow into appreciate things more as they get older. And I included too. I'm pretty much included in all that. I also did get me a new game as well. It's called Football Manager. So I've been playing a lot of that. I want to really do some streaming on that game as well. I thought that would be cool for a stream or something. Football Manager. I got it on sale for 15 bucks. Really nice, really cool game. You basically manage your football club, and you got tons of teams and stuff from around the world. You manage it from the lowest leagues all the way to the top. So I've been doing a lot of bit of that, and it's been really enjoyable. So we're gonna be heading down to this area pretty soon. So one of the really interesting things about Wyoming is we're gonna get to here soon. Of course, there's also lots of other really cool things about Wyoming. Of course, Wyoming has a lot of animal diversity, and it's because, of course, with a lot of the area protected by the federal government, Wyoming's wildlife and species are also been protected too. And there's lots of different fauna here in the state, including its bison, grizzly bears, black bears, moose, pronghorn, mountain lions, wolves, deer, and elk, as well as many smaller animals and numerous bird species. But it's got quite a few. It's about at least 18 large mammal species and 103 small mammal species. But of course, Wyoming's state mammal is the bison. It used to be all over the grasslands at one point. But of course, they were then hunted down to near extinction by the American settlers. So let's start with a bit of more Wyoming stuff. So economically speaking, Wyoming, its economy is around $49 billion in 2022, with most of the growth in the tourist areas like Teton County. Boom conditions, however, neighboring states were drawing a lot of the energy workers away from Wyoming, and about half of its population of its counties show population loss. However, they make active attempts to keep the population educated in Wyoming. The main drivers of Wyoming's economy, however, has been mainly that of mineral extraction and tourism, two big industries. I mean, with the federal government owning about 42% of its landmass, a lot of this area was about mining. About $14 billion in Wyoming have been mining, while tourism contributed about 3.8 billion US dollars. And the reason why tourism has been a big deal, I mean, you have two very popular national parks in Yellowstone and Grand Teton, plus the other national monuments like Devil's Tower and Forest Butte are, are all very popular monuments. Historically, agriculture was an important component. However, it's waned over the more recent years, but it's still a big part of its culture and lifestyle, which includes beef, hay, sugar beets, grain, and wool. So, definitely some pretty big stuff. But of course, the big part of a lot of Wyoming's economy and its importance goes down to mineral and energy production. Wyoming has commodities in coal, natural gas, methane, crude oil, uranium, and trona, which is basically known as trisodium hydrogen dicarbonate dehydrate. Hydrate. Yes. Imagine saying that a lot of times. But Wyoming produced about 277 million short tons of coal. It once peaked in 2008 with 514 million short tons of coal. And it has a pretty sizable reserve of 68 billion tons of coal in its reserves. You'd be surprised by this, but Wyoming also has oil reserves. Yes, oil. Wyoming produced about 50 million barrels of crude oil in 2007, which is fifth. Though it went down in recent years to eighth in 2022. However, it was the second largest producer of oil, gas, and federal lands. Only Alaska had more. At its peak, it had over 27,000 producing wells, including those of oil and gas. And its oil reserves in the end of 2021 were around 978 million barrels of oil a year, which is about 2% of all U.S. reserves of oil in the United States. But one thing that potentially would help Wyoming in the future is wind energy. Because of its geography and altitude, its wind energy potential is one of the highest of any U.S. state. Carbon County is home to the proposed largest wind farm in the nation. However, it's been halted thanks to new taxes. That's causing a lot of the wind. That's why we don't see a lot of wind stuff. Oh my goodness, Joey Bolo. And I haven't seen you in a long time, Joey. It's been a long while since I've last seen you, Joey Bolo. How you been, my dude? Yeah, Joey Bolo, longtime streamer of Flight Sim. Bolo, it's been ages. I hope you're doing well, my dude. I know I didn't go to Expo this year, but really enjoying my time here flying the sim and just doing some bit of stuff. So we're in Wyoming today, Joey Polo. Um, what the heck's going on? Oh, what the heck's going on? It's like tilted to one side or something. Oh, this is weird. What the heck's going on? This is weird. This is not normal. Oh my god. Oh my. Yeah, dipping our toes in Wyoming. Yeah, what a weird thing it was like. Yeah, we're in Wyoming. We're about to hit to Rawlins, Rawlins is our second stop of the day. We're heading our way to Cheyenne, which is the capital and largest city in the state. But we'll be flying out of this region once again during our National Park series. In fact, we'll be heading down through this area to Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. We'll be checking out Rocky Mountain National Park during that trip. So we'll be learning more about these parks and all. But yes, I'm looking forward to this weekend always. We're just about 159 nautical miles to our final stop here in Cheyenne. So we don't really have that much far left to go. Yeah, all this area is part of the Continental Divide region in Wyoming. All of this is Continental Divide. So you see a lot of the different tectonic plates and all that colliding, and it creates some really interesting scenery and stuff all around this. So, beautiful area here today. Of course, Rawlins will be coming up very shortly, so we're going to make our final lane of the day, second to last here. So I wanted to ask you guys some pretty important stuff. So one of the big questions would be, would you guys don't mind me keeping the 2 days a week? Because I like to keep it the 2 days in the week. So I like to keep 2 days in the week. So of course tomorrow's going to be the friendly. Tomorrow is going to be a friendly matchup against Leganes as Louisville City. The Lucy will have its international friendly tomorrow at Lynn Family Stadium against the Spanish side, Leganes. So I do want to give you a bit of information about C. Leganes, actually, since Lucy are going to be facing them tomorrow. They just got relegated from the La Liga this past year, but they're based in Leganes, in the Madrid metro area. Founded back in June 23rd, 1928. They play at the Estadio Municipal de Butar, Butarque, which housed 12,000 fans. Um, their nickname, however, is pretty interesting. They're known as Los Pepineros, literally translate to in Spanish, the cucumber growers. Yes, that is actually a pretty funny little nickname. The cucumber growers. But they started back in 6th Division. They made their way up to La Liga for the first time ever in 2015-2016 season. Got promoted for the first time ever. But yeah, pretty cool little club. Pretty cool little club, a bit of a success story. But yeah, I don't cheer for them because I have a different Spanish club to cheer for. Espanol. I cheer for Spain. Pericos. Parakeet. Pretty cool stuff. So, I prefer 2 days. Yeah, it kind of makes sense for the weekend and stuff. Of course, after that though, Louisville City would then later take on Tulsa. Next Saturday will be Tulsa, which is actually the game I'll be going to in real life. I'll be attending the game against FC Tulsa. Of course, I really wanted to do a friendly one with Frankfurt in Frankfurt and with Frankfurt and Aston Villa, but I don't think I'll get tickets to that. To see Louisville and to see Frankfurt and Villa. But yeah, I'm pretty excited though for the USL season. Of course, I'm ready for the Premier League season though. It's only going to be about a month. We only got a month left of the Premier League season to watch Everton play, watch the Toffees. They got to take on Leeds United for their first game of this new era in Everton against Leeds United. So, pretty much looking forward to that on August Premier League. Saturday, it will be Monday, August 18th. Will be the Toffees against the Whites. So looking forward to the Premier League, but I'll keep an eye on the other major leagues: Serie A, Bundesliga, and La Liga. I'll be keeping an eye on that. I'll be keeping an eye on AS Roma in Serie A. Gotta keep an eye on for AS Roma of Serie A. I'll be going to Rome, of course, and gotta keep track of Roma. After all, the people of Everton also own AS Roma. Gotta cheer on for the Romans. Espanyol of La Liga. I'll be visiting Barca next year, and then I'm also gonna watch Frankfurt. It'll be pretty fun to watch some games. Yeah, I gotta watch all these clubs. Remember, I have a European audience. So most of my audience is from Europe, so track of that. Rollins is going to be coming up shortly. I don't have any notes for Rollins, but Rollins is a town in Carbon County, Wyoming, population 800 people, named after the General John Arnold Rollins, Aaron Ronald Rollins, in 1867. Rollins is more well known for being the cross section of I-80. It's actually well known for being the namesake for Rollins Red, which is a type of pigment, containing hemonite that's mined near this area. And it has anti-rust properties. Paint that contains it actually has anti-rust properties. It was used as the original paint on the Brooklyn Bridge. And believe it or not, it was also the northernmost border of the Republic of Texas back in the day. Pretty cool stuff to mention here. Not too much, but pretty cool stuff. That's Rollins. Bit. Got a lot of great people here today, guys. Thank you for coming by here. We're going to go ahead and just send down a bit. I'm going to go ahead and power down the engine. So send. Yeah, all this area is part of the Continental Divide, and this is actually one part of the Continental Divide Trail, which trails through much of this. But yeah, you can definitely see elements of the Continental Divide right in this area. All this terrain series marked by the Continental Divide. Goes through a lot of this area too. Yeah, this area here is pretty wild. Here's Rollins. Gonna land runway left. And here we go, guys. Our second land today, and we're gonna go in. Here it is, guys. Welcome to Rollins, Wyoming. Got one last leg left to go after this. Take a break here for just a bit, and then we'll make our way over. we'll stop right here for just a bit as we stop here in Rollins. You guys are more than welcome to catch up on some drinks and stuff and getting ready for the last leg. We got one final leg left to go. We're just about 117 miles out. So we'll get ready for the last leg. Let's go ahead and get ready for the last flight in this stream. Let's go ahead and get ready for the last flight. Let's make our way up to let's go ahead and finish up some bit of Wyoming for a bit. Let's go ahead and make our way over. Here we are, guys. We'll be cruising around this area. Let's go ahead and talk a bit more about Wyoming as we're going to be flying along here. So in terms of transportation, at least, Wyoming, in terms of transportation, the largest airport in the state is Jackson Hole, with more than 500 employees, is the largest airport in the state. The second biggest airport in the state, I think it's Cheyenne. Cheyenne's the second biggest airport in the state. Cheyenne, Jerry Olson Field is the second biggest, and I think the third biggest is Casper. Casper's the third biggest in Wyoming. Casper's the third biggest in Wyoming. Of course, 3 interstate highways and 13 U.S. highways pass through Wyoming. And the highway system also serves the state. The 3 interstate highways that go through Wyoming is Interstate I-25 through south of Cheyenne, runs north, intersecting I-80 west of Cheyenne, and it passes through Casper's and ends at I-90 near Buffalo in the north. Interstate 80 crosses the Utah border west of Evanston, runs east to the southern third of the state, passes through Cheyenne, and I-90 cuts to the northeast part of the state. Of course, there are several U.S. routes that go to this too. One interesting fact about Wyoming is it's one of only 2 U.S. states in the contiguous 48 not served by Amtrak, the other one being South Dakota. It was once served by both Amtrak's San Francisco Zephyr and Pioneer lines, however, nowadays they don't pass through the cities anymore. In terms of sports and culture, culturally speaking, Wyoming, and obviously due to sparse population, there are no major sports teams. The closest they did have one that was back in Gillette, however, they departed in 2023. But if you want to talk about the biggest sports in the city, you would actually go to Laramie, actually, because the University of Wyoming is the biggest sports in the state and are very popular in the state. And the stadiums are about 1,700 feet above sea level, the highest of Division One NCAA Division One schools. There's also a couple of other universities, but most notably, it's Wyoming. So yes, that's true. And then the Wyoming High School Activity Association also sponsors sports and even have a junior hockey team. But as you can tell, Wyoming doesn't have any major league team. Obviously, not even minor league team. So yeah, there's definitely not a lot of stuff in terms of sports. Now, if you guys aren't aware about the University of Wyoming Cowboys and Cowgirls, one unique thing is their school colors are brown and gold, which is pretty unique compared to most other schools. Their fight song is actually Ragtime Cowboy Joe and Fight Wyoming are two fight songs. And again, they have a pretty unique fight song. And they do many sports, but their most famous is football and basketball are their two big sponsored sports in there as well. They also have a few other club sports too. Um, they won the college basketball championship back in 1943. They actually won a national championship. Crazy enough, Wyoming's actually won a national championship. And then their football program's pretty famous too. They've won 14 conference titles, and they've had some very notable players, but most notably, in recent years, Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills, as well as Hall of Fame head coach Marv Levy. So yeah, some very famous people did play in Wyoming, and they got some pretty intense rivalries. Most notably, Colorado State is big rival. They don't. Colorado State and Wyoming have one of the most barely contested college football rivalries, if not one of the most underrated ones. They played basically almost every year since 1899. It's the oldest, one of the oldest rivalries west of the Mississippi. They also got other ones with Hawaii and Utah State as well, but yeah, Wyoming is definitely really a really interesting program and a really interesting college. It's a cool school. Definitely be interested in checking that out. So this area is all part of Medicine Bow Route National Forest. Now we won't be flying over it. We'll fly around it, but we'll fly over it during our national park series. We might even take a landing at Sugarloaf Mountain and take a bit of a landing and do some exploration. Very cool. This is Medicine Row Forest to our right. So if you look to our right, there's Medicine Row National Forest. Sugarloaf Mountain, of course. Yeah, makes me really seeing all this makes me excited for the National Park Series. May want to still do some more flight plans. let's go ahead, guys, and talk about some fun facts about Wyoming for a bit as we make our way. So here are some really fun facts about the Equality State, Wyoming. The horse on the Wyoming license plate is named after, it has a name, Old Steamboat, and in fact, it was named after a Bronco that could not be ridden in the back in the aughts or the teens. Yes. And in fact, Old Steamboat is such an iconic horse that he's actually featured in the University of Wyoming logos for the University of Wyoming program. So he's definitely very famous in that. In addition to this, as well, the Wind River here in Wyoming is actually changes its name in the middle of the stream. Then becomes the Big Horn River at the side of the Wind River Canyon. For each year, the Native Americans hold a ceremony depending on the wetting of the waters. Of course, the nickname comes from the equality because the rights women have traditionally enjoyed in Wyoming compared to other parts of the U.S. The official song of the state is simply titled Wyoming. And of course, the first dude ranch was Eaton Ranch near Wolf. And the Eatons actually came up with the names Dude. Yes. Dude Ranch actually comes from. Yes, Eaton Ranch is what came up with the Dude Ranch. And basically, that's how Dude Ranch came to be in Wyoming. So yes, that's actually how Dude even came to existence. Here in Wyoming. Pretty cool, huh? How cool is that? So finally, of course, we will be going through is here are some notable people from Wyoming, of course. There's plenty of them. James Bridger, very well-known trader, guide, and storyteller, one of the big mountain men of the West. Trader John Colton, who also explored much of Yellowstone. Educator June Etta Downley. Sportscaster from Green River, Kurt Gowdy. Thomas Fitzpatrick, a mountain man and guide. Isabel Jewell, a very well-known actress. Writer Ted Olson. John Portuguese Phillips, major frontiersman. Jackson Pollock, a painter from Cody, which, by the way, if you guys aren't aware about Cody, it actually hails its name from. He hails his name from. A lot of it. He's hailed from. He's hailed from New York, but Cody is actually named after Buffalo Cody himself. Alan K. Simpson, a senator, the first state governor Francis E. Warren, and the chief Shoshone Chief Washakie. How cool is that, guys? we're just about 71 nautical miles. We're about to hit to our next waypoint. In 35 nautical miles, we'll be heading to Laramie, Wyoming. Be heading to Laramie. This is Medicine Bow National Forest. We'll be flying into this area once again in the National Park series. Covering that. Oh, I forgot to. Whoops. I forgot to uncover it. So we're gonna be flying to Laramie actually. So Laramie, Wyoming is actually Wyoming's fourth most populous city with a population of 31,000 in 2020. Its elevation is about 7,200 feet above sea level, and it's the home of the University of Wyoming. Laramie was settled by European Americans in 1860 at the completion of the Union Pacific Railroad line to the area, which crosses the Laramie River. One really notable thing about Laramie, of course, this is pretty much a major regional center for both culture and economic status. Laramie is home to several important events, including the Jubilee Days that celebrate Wyoming's statehood, the carnival rides, music, games, food, and more. Tons of really cool museums, plenty of historical sites, because a lot of it was built for territorial stuff as well, and it's very popular for outdoor enthusiasts, especially that of outdoor things. Snowmobiling, mountain biking, hunting, fishing, and hiking. Are very popular here. So, really cool stuff. Well, so really cool city, especially a great little college town. Be making our way here very. I mean, it's pretty. we go, guys. This is Laramie. To our right, straight ahead of us is Laramie. So this is Laramie, Wyoming. Go Pokes. Let's go ahead and once we fly over Laramie, we'll talk about our last major city. We'll be visiting the capital, Cheyenne. So we'll be making our way to Cheyenne, and then we'll go to our last stop. There's downtown Laramie. We'll be flying over that pretty soon. And then we'll be making our way Yep, here it is, downtown Laramie. Beautiful scenery, guys. I hope you're all enjoying this. It's been absolute blast of a flight. This is Laramie. All this down here is the University of Wyoming, so there's a football stadium, basketball arena, all that down below. Let's go ahead and cover the last city. Hey, Planet Neutral, good to see you, my dude. Welcome on in. We're on the last leg of this stream. So this is Cheyenne we're going to be visiting next after this. We just felt Laramie. We're heading to Cheyenne, the capital, most populous city with 65,000 people. Its metro area is 102,000 people. It was established within the Dakota Territory in 1807 at the junction of the Union Pacific Railroad, and it was named after the local Cheyenne people. It's mainly anchored economically by government services, transportation, and military operations, most notably the Francis E. Warren Air Force Base. With emerging growth from data centers and energy, the city hosts cultural institutions like the Wyoming State Museum and the Cheyenne Frontiers Days Old West Museum. Of course, it's known for its famous festival since 1897, the Cheyenne Frontier Days, a major rodeo cultural event, and it's one of the largest rodeo celebrations in the world. Really cool city though. It's known as the largest outdoor rodeo and western festival in the world. It's held for the full week of July. It's been going on since then. There's also several historic landmarks and buildings. The Air Force Base there is actually one of the U.S.'s oldest and continuous active installations in the United States, mainly strategic missile base. It's home to quite a few stuff too. Oh, no worry. Oh, that stinks. But I hope maybe next time we get to be back in Wyoming next time. I know it's a beautiful state. We started in Jackson. We went down to Lander and Rollins. Finally, are going to be here. So the main airport we'll be visiting is Cheyenne Regional. It's also known as Jerry Olson Field. This airport's been around technically since the 1920s. Airport as well played a big role in the airmail industry during the 1920s. Was a major area for both airmail and passenger flights between San Francisco and New York because of the lack of mountain peaks to worry about. Grew a lot. It was also used in World War II as a modification and completion center for B-17 pilots. And one notable person from this area was Captain Ralph S. Johnson, who was a tough pilot for the U.S. Army Air Corps, which later became the U.S. Air Force. And the turret of the B-17 is actually known as the Cheyenne turret. Yes, because it was invented here in the city. Charles Lindbergh visited this well, and so did Amelia Earhart. In recent times, one notable visitor was Jessica Dubroff, who lost her life after a terrible takeoff here at the airport. Due to the high altitude, a lot of manufacturers actually test their new jetliners here at the airport, including those of Embraer and Boeing. But yeah, this is a cool little airport with some pretty cool history here too. Of course, there's only one flight. It actually flies to Denver, of course. Because, you know, traffic from Denver and all that is pretty rough. That completes the last slide for this. The reason it's named Jerry Olson is because Olson was a former airport manager and helped a lot of its transportation and helped design this airport. That's why it's got a thing. Okay, I was off course. I need to get back on course. But as you can see here, it's a beautiful state. Wyoming is gorgeous. Just again, it's not very well populated, especially when you compare it to its southern neighbor of Colorado, which has way more people. Like, no, seriously, Colorado has way more people than Wyoming does. However, the nice thing though about not having so many people is the scenery is pretty much well kept, not really touched very much. So definitely one nice but we'll be trying to get back into. We're gonna go ahead and start this. This is where we're gonna be going to our last stop here in Wyoming. Here it is, guys. This is Cheyenne. Finally making our way over to Wyoming. This here is downtown Cheyenne, one of the only areas in the state to actually have put a ram track. This here is Cheyenne. Welcome to Cheyenne, Wyoming. Our last stop of the day. Hope you guys enjoyed this stream, guys. I have a lot of fun here today in Wyoming. And make the landing. We're down. And that's it. So guys, we've officially made it to Wyoming. I hope you guys enjoy the stream. We'll be back in Utah on Sunday. We're going to go say hello to our raid. I'm going to raid someone a little different today. I'm going to be raiding Rapunzel today. I thought it'd be really cool to raid someone a bit different. So guys, thank you all so much, and I'll see you again on Sunday. So take care, guys, and I hope you have a good day. Goodbye, everyone.